afternoon, John.
Hey,
I understand it's still smoky down in San Diego, just like it is up here.
yeah, probably not as bad as it is up there, but it started a couple days ago.
Yeah, I can actually smell smoke here in my apartment,
Oh, wow.
but I have the windows open. It's really cool. I think that one of the pluses from a weather perspective is that the particulate matter in the air actually cools it down.
Yeah, yeah, it's
So
cooler.
it's not even going to be 90 here today.
Yeah.
So what do you want to talk about?
Um, Nothing happens to me, everything happens for me, um, including what's going on now. Um, um, and when you add on the fire problem, the virus problem, the political polarization, nothing happens to me, everything happens for me.
Great topic.
Okay.
Just so you
Let's
know, I had a couple other things, and of course, it's all related. So I finally got my hard copy of "Feeling Is the Secret," Neville Goddard, and one of the things I'd like to talk about at some point is I'd like to go in deeper, and maybe it's related to "Life Happens for Me, Not to Me," into this question of finding the feeling.
hmm
And Goddard has a lot of stuff about the value and the foundational importance of feeling. Um, and this happens also in the New Thought tradition that you and I are a part of. It's like, find the feeling. Okay, how the heck do you do that?
Yeah.
And then
Uh,
another thing I wanted to possibly talk about is something that I've heard you say the last couple of weeks, and I've started adopting it. It's like I'm reveling in my character defects.
yeah.
And how that might sound counterintuitive to somebody just starting out, and how do you move from heal me of my character defects to I'm reveling in my character defects? Or maybe they're the same thing.
Yeah. And my journey has been incremental. I had some pretty powerful epiphanies, experiences throughout my life, um, some even before my recovery, and then the ones in my recovery have all added up um, to growth. And timely not. Um, this is over for me. It's been over my recovery 32-year period. In life, I'm turning 71 this month. Um, uh, and looking back, there's a line in a song by Railroad Earth, um, from this high hill of old age. It's like I could look back on this and see the synchronicity, the orchestration, the perfection and the ups and downs, the trauma and the high points. Not to make light of people's pain or trauma or losses, um, and they're all part of what made me who I am in this state of being. I now find myself where I can stay in a healthy, joyful, loving, grateful way that I'm reveling in my character defects. The latest revelation I got is this awareness, and I really don't have the words for it. This state I find myself where I feel connected to myself and the people around me. Um, I lost my train of thought. Has been, everything that's happened to me has contributed. Um, and I'm not, like, bubble-headed optimistic that nothing will happen to me that isn't hurtful or tragic or devastating. And I know that I will pay attention, see the gift in whatever comes to me. So Um, uh, when I was in pain and trauma, the hurt, it hurt. It was painful. It was at times tragic and devastating. Um, and I find myself where I am now. And the focus I had was healing, of recovering, of getting through family of origin trauma into authentic living. You know, I said that 20 years ago, and I had no idea that it would include everything that it includes in my life today. And the material I present to the people I work with is the foundation. It's the I want to say curiosity point where things start to make different sense. And shadow work, being able to, it was painful looking at my capacity for destruction. And what I found is the only way to move from the destructive behavior was to own it, was to say I'm capable of that. I'm not only capable, I've inflicted it on myself and the people around me throughout my life. And in this place I find myself, that doesn't happen. I'm owning the destructiveness is the beginning of it ending. One of the podcasts we talked about, I own being a racist. And I don't know how clear I was on the ownership of that, is that led me to seeing the humanity in all people. Without that owning, I'm a racist. It led me, I won't say to the light, but to this place I find myself.
So are you saying, to go back to your first point that we started to talk with, are you saying that in effect racism happens for me, not to me?
My perception of separateness from a group of people, which will kind of define racism: African Americans, Chinese, and in my journey owning my Native American heritage, I experienced the race problem inside a ethnic group. Whether you were born on the reservation or you're not born on the reservation, whether you're wannabe Indian or you're a urban Indian, or like you get classified into this category, and then certain ones are more authentic than the others. And living with a racist father who was ashamed of me and my brothers and my mother because we tan well, has all added to my capacity for compassion.
So is that the answer to my question? Yes?
I don't even remember the question.
Does racism happen for me, not to me?
It happened. It was a process of my awareness, enlightenment.
I say it that way because I actually think that the point is universally true. Whatever occurs in my life that I use to blame my predicament on, that happened to me, is something that I can learn to turn around and use to move toward that compassion, that inclusivity, that generosity that you just spoke about. So as long as I resist it, then it's going to persist in the form that I'm resisting it.
Yeah, what you resist persists. I've added to that because I've worked with resistance in myself and the demographic I work with, drug and alcohol counseling, that resistance to anything different or new or that had anything to do with being sober instead of being able to have fun in my life. What you resist persists and prevails. It becomes
Yeah.
it becomes the focus, the perception, everything I see. If I'm a racist, everything I see is filtered through that racist perception. Um, and I just the real racism I discovered in me is that I didn't like myself.
Right.
Um, I heard something from one of the podcasts I listened to or a book I was reading that um, it's a um, consideration or a belief that until you reach a point of devastation or hopelessness, the motivation to change, it comes from that dark place in your life. It's like the belly of the well, or the I forget the name. It'll come to me as I'm talking, but the dark night of the soul, where everything, and I've had several where everything I held of value just fell apart. It had no meaning anymore. And in that, I'm thinking now of the phoenix rising out of the ashes. It's an archetype that has been part of my life. It's been a part of my personal journey, is being burnt to a crisp. I'm toast to how can it get any better than this? Um, so my I say it all the time, and I see it happening all the time. Nothing happens to me. Everything happens for me. Um, so I'm about out of words here. Um, we can coronavirus, the fires in California, the political polarization, the um, the fear of lack. Um, if I see that all those are motivated from an internal perception and are in alignment with what I was told as a child or what I was exemplified, the energy that my father held and the energy that my mother held came together to a perfect storm inside me to create an energy that I get to work through. Um, and I intend to do that. And introducing people to this concept is precarious. Um, and I do it, I don't want to say cryptically, but subtly. You know, I ask people, what do you want that you don't have? And then talk about the barriers for acquiring something you see that is separate from yourself. And some of the examples of that would be a life of peace, self-confidence, self-love, self-forgiveness, something that people don't have. And that desire opens up this particular activating system that you and I keep talking about, survival mechanism, to start being curious about different information, about a different way to see. And it all happens as I watch it in the people I work with, in their body. It's a connection to that heart space or that feeling tone. And usually we use words to describe that, but words always fall short.
One of the challenges that I have, and it's, by the way, I love this challenge, is the coming to the experience, not just the intellectual awareness that everything that's going on is happening inside of me first, which Neville Goddard says up front in this little book about that everything outside of me is just a reflection of something inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love about the accountability work is it's a gentle but direct way of being introduced to those internal processes that I'm seeing outside of me.
Yeah.
So the formal word is withdrawing projections. So learning that whatever might trigger an intense emotional response, which usually shows up in some form or version of agitation, is something out there reminding me and touching upon or opening up something inside of me.
Yeah.
And that if I can learn to sit with that, if I can learn to not reject that, if I can learn to refrain from labeling it in some kind of negative or nasty, because I've done that, fashion, then there's all kinds of information available to me. Then eventually I can get to understanding that life happens for me, because in this case it feels like it's happening to me.
Yeah.
You did this to me. You
Mm-hmm.
caused me to feel blah blah blah. And accountability is an incredibly practical way to begin to shift the understanding of what's really going on. To go to what you said a few minutes ago about owning an experience, which is just another way of saying, I'm declaring this is mine, and I'm choosing to experience it as it's happening.
Yeah.
And to notice if I've got a commentary going on in my head about it, to just invite the commentary to stand aside for a minute so I can just feel.
Yeah.
And then in the intensity of that feeling, which has no thought, it's just feeling, it's just sensation. If I can stay with it long enough to avoid the automatic labeling that we've all been taught to do, I'm actually in infinity.
Yeah.
I'm in an experience of no boundary, infinite energy. And by touching that infinity, I now have access to anything.
Anything and everything
Yeah.
that I need in this moment to experience myself in connection with you or my environment.
Yep.
Um, this material starts where people are at. Our conversation about infinity and states of being and is all well and good if somebody's had the experience or used the language where we can carry on a conversation. The people I meet that come to me have little or maybe some, generally no experience in this kind of conversation. So the start is feeling. The start is,
Yeah. And in the moment, what are you feeling right now?
yeah, and exemplifying that for them. Just me holding this space creates attention or curiosity. Maybe first attention and then maybe curiosity. And the way I say it is, when I present my material or I present the uh, beginning of the class and introduce myself and tell people that this is about what they're looking for and that they hold value as human beings as they came into the space, is out of the paradigm. It has no place in their frame of reference, because our conversation is about um, what do you call it, when you take things apart. It's about confirming the separateness or this the reduction into parts. When everything is whole, and the perception is I got to figure out what the problem is and then address that specific problem, which is generally all the people around me or the system or the laws or somebody else, um, um, which creates separateness inside. So this is just real difficult. It's I don't say it's difficult, and when it happens, it flows. Um, um, People who become willing to try the accountability process. If I ask them to own their projections, and I get them to spontaneously talk about the person they're irritated with, and they say, well, that guy's manipulative. Okay, so all right, let's try this and see what happens. If you say, I'm manipulative, and just take a breath and see what happens. That truth, which is the out of their awareness, which is the projection, that truth resonates with their bodies, and something internally happens, and usually there's no words for it, and they can like define the feeling, like what are you feeling? Most people, the majority of time, say relief, and that could mean a whole bunch of things. And then I ask, what do you want? I want it. I want to be calm. Is my intent to be calm, or is my intent to be at peace? That changes them internally, and they simply start experiencing different. They start manifesting differently. From that point, it might be subtle, it might be overt, and we're simply looking for that difference in perception, or a pause, maybe like, whoa, what just happened? And then practice. I say the same thing over and over and over. You know, people that my biggest complaint is, we did this last week, and I said, well, the truth is we did it 2 months ago, and we're going to do it next time we get together. And there's something in it that I think is of value. And it's just, I don't want to say it's hit and miss, because it's very specific, it's very directed, it's very focused, I'm focused, and I get results.
Well, again, that's the value, is it's based on the insight that all experience is present moment experience. And therefore, in my experience, I have access to everything. And that I've been trained to think of my experience as disembodied. I can actually think and not feel at the same time.
Right.
And having done that for years and years and years, that became an automatic default position that accountability has begun to help me to unlearn, and to learn something more effective, which is to be aware of how I'm feeling way more frequently. I'm not saying I'm 100% aware of feelings 24/7 in my day. But what I've become aware of is that the minute something seems out of the flow that my body is experiencing as okay, pleasant, neutral, then that's the time to pay attention to what the feeling is, and not just simply think about it. And when I'm capable of doing that, the body experience has information for me that I don't have to wait years and years and go through therapy and all those kinds of things to access. I can just access it in the present moment experience.
And the body has not forgotten how to do this.
Correct.
The body, it
can't forget.
No, it is it. It is you, mind, body, spirit. And we've learned the language of separation, or right, wrong, good, bad, positive, negative, optimistic, pessimistic. And that language itself keeps us out of our feeling body. Any judgment of a situation like, well, that's bad, so I want to get away from it. So, excuse me, I'm going to go get drunk, or I'm going to start screaming, yelling. I have no awareness that the motivation for the avoidant behavior, whether it's substance or violence or coercive or a behavior that causes separation, that's all subconscious, because we have been taught to filter through right, wrong, good, bad. And I tell you, my goal was never to be on the wrong side, always be right. And make sure that everybody knew that I'm that guy. I'm the one that gets it right. Now, it's not that I get it right or wrong, that I own where I'm at, because then I can say, I like this, I'm staying, or I need more introspection here. I need to look at this. I need to look at this aspect of myself and own it and grow. My experience with accountability is that if I find myself in a decompensated or a spontaneous place where I'm irritated, agitated, and I project something like, well, that was a dumbass move. Ooh, I stop. I'm on that, because there's still something in that subconscious family of origin conditioning that says I have no value. There's a worth problem inside. If I project it out, it's internal. And a lot of, here's the point I want to make. A lot of the people that I listen to that talk about states of being or enlightenment, or like Neville Goddard, Sadhguru, they speak to people without this essential bit of information, is that the system is looking out for the person's best interest with the old information, and letting go of the judgment would mean I don't exist or I devalue myself. And this mechanism takes that as a death threat. So what you resist persists. For me, any attempt by somebody else to assist me, I perceived as a threat. And again,
Subconsciously.
Subconsciously, I didn't say this person threatened me, but my reaction was if I was being threatened, and it made no rational sense. The brain can handle 4 bits of information per second. The subconscious handles 4 million bits of information per second. So, and it is on guard with, don't let anybody get too close to you, because you're going to get slapped or hit or ridiculed. And my brain says, I want to get close to this person. And my body says, no, you're not. And the 4 million bits of information trump me thinking I want it.
I think it's useful for students of this process to appreciate how this happens. My assessment is that this happens this way because we are born with a fully developed limbic system and a fully developed brainstem, where all of the emotions and the autonomic processes are happening, but we aren't born with a fully developed neocortex, aka the place where we think and provide rational analysis. Right. So the emotional state actually generates the thinking state on the developmental spectrum. Yeah. I spent 3 or 4 years only as an emotional being. I'm listening, people are using language around me, and I'm starting to learn as my neocortex develops in the 12th month and later. It matures that late. So I'm starting to absorb the linguistic environment that I'm in, but I can't process it yet, consciously. That only occurs sometime around 3, 4, 5 for most human beings. So it was an aha I had recently, that all of this thinking that comes in my triggered moments, oh, that guy's being an asshole, or that you betrayed me, or that the feelings generate the thinking, and they're like glued together. They're like one thing. because the emotion is dominant.
Yes.
Now, here's the good news, is that language has an independent capability. If I change my emotional state, I can change the language to also now support this higher goal. So when I say I intend to experience life as joy, peace, freedom, and community, that new language has the power that my new emotional state has invested in it. And so this process now, it took me to be aware. I had to get conscious to notice that I had an emotional trajectory to my thinking patterns, my, as you call them, the obstacles or barriers, habits, expectations, belief system, attitudes. Those were all formed in this emotional world that I lived in for 3 or 4 years.
Yep.
And now, though, my rational mind is capable of working with my emotional body to change that, which my emotional body could not do on its own. The emotional body would just be in inertia forever if I didn't have consciousness to intervene and go, is that what we really want? So again, that's the value to me of accountability. It allows me to use my rational consciousness to look into my feeling state and repartner with it in a new way. That's some of what's occurred to me in the last few months.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a Trinity, mind, body, spirit, as a being, single unit.
So is it okay if I want to read a couple things from Goddard here, because I have a question that follows from what I just said.
Okay.
Is it okay?
Yes.
He says, so friends, this is from Feeling is the Secret, Neville Goddard. He says, control of your feeling is all important to a full and happy life. Never entertain an undesirable feeling, nor think sympathetically about wrong in any shape or form. Do not dwell on the imperfection of yourself or others. To do so is to impress the subconscious with these limitations. What you do not want done unto you, do not feel that it is done unto you or another. This is the whole law of a full and happy life. Everything else is commentary. Every feeling makes a subconscious impression, and unless it is counteracted by a more powerful feeling of an opposite nature, must be expressed. The dominant of two feelings is the one expressed. I am healthy is a stronger feeling than I will be healthy. To feel I will be is to confess I am not. I am is stronger than I am not. What you feel you are always dominates what you feel you would like to be. Therefore, to be realized, the wish must be felt as a state that is rather than a state that is not. Sensation precedes manifestation and is the foundation upon which all manifestation rests. Be careful of your moods and feelings, for there is an unbroken connection between your feelings and your visible world. Your body is an emotional filter and bears the unmistakable marks of your prevalent emotions. Emotional disturbances, especially suppressed emotions, are the cause of all disease. To feel intensely about a wrong without voicing or expressing that feeling is the beginning of disease, dis-ease in both body and environment. Do not entertain the feeling of regret or failure, frustration, or detachment from your objective results in disease. Think feelingly only of the state you desire to realize. Feeling the reality of the state sought and living and acting on that conviction is the way of all seeming miracles. All changes of expression are brought about through a change of feeling.
So here's the rub. Our language has confused feeling and behavior. We use feeling words to describe behavior. If somebody is hysterical, we say they're emotional. When what we're seeing as hysterical is a behavior coming from conditioning around, it could be rejection, abandonment, self-worth. And if we continue to use words, emotions, and describe the emotion as the behavior, we're stuck. We're stuck. So anybody listening to what you just read would think they have to control something, would think it doesn't make sense. I've talked to plenty of men and talked about feelings, and they say, well, you don't want to see me emotional because people get hurt. So they've attached the avoidant behavior or the violence with the emotion. So I say, feel your feelings. They're going, hell no, I'm dangerous when I'm in a feeling mode. And the behavior is post feeling. We even use the word anger to describe all types of violence. And yet, instead of saying it's violence, we say it's anger. So, I mean, I encourage people to embrace their emotions. And one of the ones I encourage them to embrace is anger. And they repel from that because they've hurt themselves, they've hurt other people, they've caused major destruction, saying that they were angry and somebody got hurt. And so the word anger, if we change this one thing, that anytime I did something to somebody, did an act, I owned the behavior as either violent or nurturing. That was a violent behavior or that was a nurturing behavior, instead of that was an angry, I was angry or I was loving. Because the loving or the anger is there may be times when somebody's actually threaten your life. You need to tap into that anger to protect yourself, move, or take the guy down. But the running away or taking the guy down isn't anger. It's the result of your awareness that there's something wrong here. And this is one of my pet peeves. Anger is not violence, and yet we've got it equated with violence. So, be in your feeling body, and it's like, doesn't even make any sense. And why would you want to? And then we demean and diminish women for being emotional or hysterical or what they call it, fickle-minded, when all that we're saying is witnessing somebody being maybe and possibly in their emotional body, and then the action will couch as, oh, she's a bitch, or women aren't supposed to be angry, or
well, and isn't that just a projection?
Say again?
Isn't that just a projection of my own unwillingness to feel?
Exactly, but people have never considered it.
I know.
It's like, it's not even it's like, no, just fix her, or fix the government, or convert the either Democrat or Republican to the other side, and everything will be fine, because then they're thinking like us and we'll be okay.
Right. Then I'll never feel conflict again.
I'll never feel conflict again. Everything will be great. When the truth is, the left and the right need each other for balance, which is the
well, that brings us back to, in my opinion, I'll make a leap here, but that brings us back to, I'm reveling in my character defects.
Mm-hmm.
So what I heard you say, I'm reinterpreting to my individuality as, I need all of me, including those things that I've rejected or denigrated. I need my left wing and my right wing.
Exactly. That's what I meant by this high heel of old age, from this perspective. Everything's been a orchestration, and everything has contributed to who I am right now.
And that's how I can get to life happens for me, not to me, is if I'm willing to see those things, if I'm willing to see the way that my reticular activating system has filtered certain things into my awareness from a quote out there and created triggers that I can now use that information to learn about those triggers, to learn about those emotional states that feel so frightened or scared or react so violently to this information. It's like, well, is that what I want? Do I really want to be controlled by this subconscious energy state, emotional state? Well, the only way for me to know that is to go to it.
Mm-hmm.
As you say in the four constants, which is one of the elements of the accountability practice, move to your pain, move to my pain, be willing to go where I'm uncomfortable. And that's what makes the doing this in a group setting, or at least a therapeutic setting, so important, because I don't trust myself to go there by myself. Because I've got all these defense mechanisms I can't even see they're going to be triggered and reacting. So I need some help to hold the space for me while I navigate these subtleties so that I can actually get to the authentic experience without interference from that traumatic little kid that's not going to go there no matter what. Yeah. And that's again, Goddard, feeling is the secret. I've got to be able to feel the authentic emotion, not the one that I've trained myself to interfere with over all these years.
Right.
Or to project away.
Speaking to a group of men, I would encourage them to embrace their anger, and then they like, what are you talking about? And I want to offer that my experience of anger, emotion, overwhelming of information and motivation to stand in the face of what I understand the condition of the world, and then say the things I say, and hold the courage of my conviction is backed up through that emotion of anger. That emotion of anger gives me the courage to stand in the face of what are you talking about? It's like, why don't you just tell me the answer? Just tell me the answer, John. Quit asking me to ask questions. It's like, and I get right now, I get that our conversation started out with my concept of explaining this, and there's no way in this one podcast, or if they listen to all 14 podcasts and this podcast, that it's going to explain just the tip of the iceberg. What do you want? And there's a different way. I trusted people in my process. I did things that other people encouraged me to do without understanding why I would want to do that. Like go to 3 or 4 meetings a week. Why would I want to spend? And I actually went to 6, 7 meetings a week.
You're talking about 12-step meetings.
12-step meetings. And was angry at the meeting because all my old friends were out having fun, living their life, and I was sitting in this meeting in my perception complaining about what my mom and dad did. And the truth of it was that I was becoming aware that everything I did came from them. It was the intergenerational passing on of this dysfunction or crooked seeing. I don't know where that came from, where I saw everything outside of me instead of I contribute. I participate in every interaction with anybody. I play a part, and I'm going to own that part. And in owning that part, I found out that I had this massive trauma that was knee-jerking me around my life. And until I addressed the trauma, the pain, the perception that I was given as a child, things were not going to change. It's internal. Jung calls it shadow work. People talk about the subconscious.
Yeah, we talked about it on a earlier podcast that even in the biblical days, people were aware of this dynamic. They just didn't have modern scientific processes or ways of looking at this, so they just called them demons.
Right.
We've got to drive out the demons. And then, of course, they projected the demon outside into Satan and the whole panoply of all of his legions of fellow devils who are out here whispering in our ears, tempting us.
Early in my life, I could swear there was 10 or 12 of them in me at any given moment.
Yeah, exactly.
When I was doing shit, I was like, why in the hell do I do that? Why did I do that to them? And why did I do that to myself? And then I'd say, I don't want to do that. And then 5 minutes later, I'd be back in the same old behavior, and it's confounding, confusing. And I had to find a rational reason, and it had to be you, them, or something.
Right.
Or I was, like the Bible says, the flesh is weak, and the flesh is decrepit, and the flesh is ungodly, and it's not spiritual, when exactly the opposite was my truth today. My body's smarter than I am, and it hasn't forgotten anything about me and my beauty and my greatness and my magnificence and my ability to create. And I'm simply acknowledging and nurturing that part of myself, and owning the manifestation of what's internal with me, what got put in me, or what I accepted, or what was conditioned, or the family of origin trauma. You know, it's easy to talk about somebody coming back from a war zone saying they have post-traumatic stress syndrome because somebody was trying to kill them. Well, guess what? In my childhood, that's the way it seemed. If I didn't fall in line, if I didn't do, and none of this was conscious, I would food, shelter, clothing. It was them. I was helpless. So it was a good idea for me to dismiss myself and do what I thought they were asking me to do, which was get it right. Don't be a burden. Don't steer the boat. Kids are to be seen and not heard. That conditioning just is confusing.
That's a nice way of putting it.
We're in this morass of trauma, trying to poke our head out and see just a glimpse of maybe there's something going on that I can affect, that I can see, that I can transform.
Well, like we said earlier, that's actually not even possible for 3 or 4 years because we are completely at the affect of the experience. There's not even a sense of agency. A 2-year-old does not have a awareness of agency. He or she is testing it pre-consciously. That's what the terrible twos are. The little kid is starting to figure out the possibility of agency, the possibility of commanding this body and making things happen, but the conscious awareness is not there yet. And so we're still at the effect of the environment, emotional, physical, safety, those things that you were talking about. So for months and months and months and years until we're 4, 5, 6, we can't even be confused, because confusion is a state of mind. The body is just simply absorbing and preparing to give birth to a state of mind that is now going to be totally standing on this experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then it said, you remember your Catholic training, John, we don't reach the age of reason till 7. So even though we become conscious around age 4 or 5, it takes a while for that particular process to start straightening itself out. Yeah. And so in our Catholic tradition that you and I both come from, we didn't go to confession until we were 7 because it was assumed we couldn't make conscious choices.
Right.
So all of that stuff, those first 7 years of our lives, they're living inside our subconscious without analysis, without a contrasting model against which to assess what we experience. And so for me, I don't know how old I was before I finally got that wasn't necessarily the truth.
Right.
It was true to me, and it feels true, but it's not, it doesn't have to be true. Accountability helps me create a different reality in a very practical way. Because guys like Goddard or some of the other people that you're citing for our new thought training now doesn't teach us how to get there. It says go there.
Yes. And don't do that.
Right.
Don't be negative.
Jesus says love your enemies. Well, how the hell do I do that?
Yeah. 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 And this is a remedial class in perception and
Remedial humanity.
if you don't start small, to make a leap from depression to joyous is too big a leap, because in between those is the experience of anger, irritation, agitation, um, awareness of self-motivated, and then the joy comes after a foundation has been created, and the foundation is not created, and it wasn't created in my childhood anymore. I miss the steps in infancy and toddler and young child about safety and security and trust and being held as valuable. My daughter was talking about my grandson about him doing going to school and learning something. He said, "Well, no, Mama, I already know how to do that. I'm good. I can do that." It's like, if I ever said something like that, it wouldn't even occur to me to say anything like that through most of my adult life, let alone hearing it from him. It was beautiful to hear. He's like confident. He knows he rocks, and he knows it. And that was taken away from me, that or not even offered to me. So there's so much we could do on. I think 7 different things we talked about today. We could do a whole podcast on.
Well, let's make the list.
Truth. Christ, Jesus said, the truth will set you free. I've been looking all my life for that absolute salvation truth. And when I heard myself say, I'm a bad dad, that resonated with my body because it was in alignment with the devaluing I felt as a child. That was truth for me. It resonated, and that truth resonated, and I heard myself say, it is my intent to be a loving, caring, nurturing father. So that truth, which was absolutely not me, and yet what I held on myself subconsciously, when I said it, it resonated. I had a feeling, which I can't tell you what it was, and the feeling itself is a combination of experiences, and it could have been legion experiences in that one feeling, I'm a bad dad. And that truth led me to the thought, the intent, loving, caring, nurturing. And when that came out of my mouth, it is my intent, and intent is another podcast, is a word that resonates with this survival mechanism. And just your survival mechanism is subjective. So whatever you tell it that's happening, it just goes, okay, let's do something now. It doesn't equivocate. It doesn't ask, well, are you sure? Are you sure you want that?
Yeah, let's stop and think about this. I'm saying that our mind doesn't do that.
No.
Or the body, rather, doesn't do that. So, subconscious. It's like, no, it's what you tell it, it says yes.
And that's where the rational mind comes in. That's where the will comes in. It's a directive to this creative force manifest, and it simply does it. I'm finding myself when you heard me say that, you know, how you doing, John? Well, I'm reveling with this big ass grin on my face because I felt it, reveling in my character defects, because those character defects led me to this state that is beyond my description. It's like without the awareness that I'm capable of destruction, this feeling of stuff, it's counterintuitive. Ask backwards, 180 degrees out of everything I was told. Don't admit you're wrong, and if you are, be repentant and beg for forgiveness and all that crap.
And maybe you'll get it.
And maybe you'll get it. And
after you serve a certain prison sentence.
And we built a whole society on punishment. Yeah.
Yes, and ironically, that's the best we've been able to figure out.
Yeah, and even though the evidence shows that it doesn't work, we keep doing it harder and harder and harder, creating stricter laws, stricter laws, stricter laws, instead of asking why the criminality, instead of asking why criminals, why the pain. And I got that from Gabriel Mate. We're asking the wrong questions. Why the pain? What amount of pain would cause a man who just spent 20 years in prison to get out and 2 months later get another 10-year sentence? Not what the crime, what the pain. I mean, yeah, it doesn't even make sense. And I've talked to many of them inside there. I must be a bad person, John. Well, actually, no. You're impressionable. This subconscious pool of information. Believe whatever your mom, dad told you about you, and you're simply acting it out. So what do you want? And then start this process of accountability a little bit at a time, have a feeling, go, whoa, what the hell was that? And then being curious, I want more, I want more. And that's where the subconscious the conscious tells the subconscious, it's a directive. That's what our conscious mind is for. And I say conscious mind, but consciousness is all there is. It's like, then we get into that high level enlightened conversation too, but.
Well, a couple other things I'd like to, I've jotted notes down here as you were sharing. A couple other things that we could do a whole podcast on is the whole question of desire. Yes. And the related, you said, that was my word, but you also said will. Mm-hmm. The will. You said we could do a whole podcast on intention. You didn't say this, but you implied it. We could do a whole podcast on manifestation. Mm-hmm. And I again, you didn't say this, but it's in between all the lines. We could do a whole. Actually, we could do this for the rest of our lives to talk about love.
Yes.
The attracting power. What is love? How do I manifest love? How do I love myself? If I can't love myself, can I love anybody else?
You want to know how I love myself?
Sure.
I use the blinker when I'm changing lanes on the freeway.
Good idea.
It's an action. It's a state of being. It's concern for self. I turn the blinker on.
Right.
Even when I don't see anybody, because that's usually when you get hit, is when you don't see them. So that's how I love myself.
So there you have it, folks. If you're new to this whole intentional living thing, all you got to do is use your blinker, and you're in love.
Yeah, if you don't already.
I don't think we need to do this anymore then.
Yeah, I think we came to the answer. The answer to life's problems: use your blinker on the freeway.
That begs a whole series of questions, but we'll save that for another podcast.
Yeah, we will. I was about ready to get into it.
I know. I saw that look. I saw that glint in your eye.
Let's stay with this.
It's on the list.
Healing. I got you. Healing state.
Any wrap-up thoughts that you like to?
Yeah, the language that we've adopted keeps us from a sense of self and volition or our own power to manifest. The language that couches everything in right, wrong, good, bad causes separation. The language that you and I started this podcast with is nothing happens to me, everything happens for me. is a different language that opens up a whole different world. And sometimes it's that simple is creating the intent to change the language. An example of that would be for anybody watching this, eliminate the word try out of your vocabulary. That will change you in ways I can't even tell you right
Well, I'll try to do that. Yoda.
Yeah, me too.
But you're right. You're right.
When I hear myself say try, I stop and go and now I'm in a default mode where and instead of try comes out of my mouth more than try.
Right.
It's a process, and anybody who attempts it, it is not my suggestion that you be able to eliminate it. And noticing it is the beginning of the end of it. It's a mini accountability process. If I hear myself say or tell myself I don't want to use the word try, and then I find myself saying it 10 times in one day, it just gives me an awareness and experience of how ingrained that is. And simply noticing it after a while, it goes away by itself. It stops. So.
Well, I would like to just add to what you were sharing that all of the language that we use gets its power from these feeling states, and you can use the same word with a different feeling state and get a different outcome.
Yeah.
And so that's, again, accountability helps me go into my body and into the experience that my body is generating through the, what do you call it, electrochemical magnetic being.
Yeah, bioelectrical.
Right. And so that's where the information is. And then the thinking, again, is informed by that. And the words become tools that can work with the feeling energies as opposed to against them. And that's the practice that I'm engaged in here, is changing my thinking to cohere with the deepest desires that live in my body.
Yeah.
For joy, love, connection, fulfillment, mastery.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been how I've learned to go there in a much more fearless and expectant way.
Mm-hmm. And
so
just simply pay attention to the results. It
Yep.
will be demonstrated in your life.
Yep.
Just like Mr. Big and Tall, we guarantee you satisfaction.
Exactly. So before we wrap up, I want to let anybody listening for the first time know that if you want to learn more from John personally, he's open to communication, and the information on how to contact John will be posted at the end of the podcast. Or if you would like to be in a group practice that uses these principles and supports ourselves, I'm part of a group here in Sacramento, California that meets via Zoom called the Rusty Nail Club. We call it the Rusty Nail because some of us just love sitting on that nail and suffering, and some of us like to learn how to get off. And my contact information to get information on how to join the Rusty Nail meetings, which are Monday nights and Thursday nights at 6:30 Pacific time, will also be at the end of the podcast. So until next time, John, I want to thank you as always for sharing your wisdom, and look forward to the next one.
Okay. Yeah, me too.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.